Are we hung up? There we
This is
go.
Adam Schoenfeld, and you're watching the Get Down show.
Yeah,
You got
Adam Show.
stuck. You got stuck like this. I
Oh,
tried.
the
I
internet
looked for your
doesn't
cue,
always
but you,
help.
you just got stuck like this.
That is
Good old
hilarious. Yeah, well,
AT&T. Yeah.
that's the internet world we live in, right? I mean, but here's the thing that's incredible about this is you're on the opposite end of the nation. You're on the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast, and you've got COVID, and yet we can
Yeah.
safely do this thing. It's super awesome. I want to refer people to a show you did recently, earlier this month. It's called the 40 Watt Podcast. And that dude does a great job of kind of covering the basics of who you are. And here comes John in to talk everything. One of the things I love about you, so here you have
Hey,
the
John.
ultimate guitar musician's dream for like in all these country bands, Jason Aldean and all of that. And you're not a country musician. Matter of fact, you're not even really a country listener.
Is that true?
Yeah. No, I'm not, man. Yeah, it's totally true. It's totally true.
I mean, you grew up in New Jersey,
I
right?
like
What
to
were you
say,
listening to?
yeah, I was listening to everything from Peter Frampton and Eric Clapton to Slayer and Metallica and Bon Jovi and Def Leppard and Miles Davis. I listened to a lot of different stuff. Um, Country wasn't really on my dial back then, you know. And we had a radio station in my hometown, but it turned country a year before I moved to Nashville. So
Hmm.
yeah,
You moved to
I just
Nashville
never.
right after
I
high
have a
school?
little saying. I like to, yeah, a year after high school. Yeah.
Okay.
So
What's
I
your
like to
saying?
say I got tricked into country music. I got tricked into country music.
I'm experiencing that right now. My wife listens to country music. This is new for her as well, although she kind of grew up with it in the house. But I'm a funk drummer. So, like
Heck yeah.
you, I've kind of been tricked into country music and realizing the more I get into it that, music is music.
Oh, it is. I think genre has become more of a lyrical term at this point. You
Yeah.
know, I think like stuff about Daisy Dukes and pickup trucks and bonfires is country, but you put a lyric about the Empire State Building on the same groove, and it's not country anymore. Especially
Yeah.
with what's going on in music these days and country music.
What what about Nashville attracted a guy who was moving from New Jersey? Why Nashville?
This the smell of success, man. The smell of success. It was
Yeah.
I was in a band, and there was a manager that wanted to sign the band to a management deal. He was going to make us stars. He was going to make us stars. So we all moved down together and lived in a house in East Nashville together. So it was that was it. My only thing I had heard about Nashville um, was a friend of mine's brother had moved there about 3 or 4 years prior to that. He was a bass player with his band, and then I heard these stories about nobody in that band playing on their record except for him on bass. And I was like, "What? What are you talking about? What is that? Why would you go
Uh-huh.
down in a band and not have your band play on the record?" And of course, come fast forward, now I'm one of those guys that's playing instead of the band members.
Yeah.
So I get it now. But as a kid, I was like, so that's the only thing I had heard about Nashville. I was actually kind of worried about it.
Yeah. Well, did you grow up listening to or aware of, you were listening to, but were you aware of the studio guys who came like the generation before you, whether it was Nashville or LA?
Yeah, a little bit.
So you knew about like
Yeah, a little bit.
Lukather.
There were a couple. Uh, yeah, Lukather from Toto and Michael Landau.
Mm.
Those cats, those LA cats. There were a couple staple records for me. Jude Cole had some of those cats on it. I think Keltner was all over one of
Yeah.
his records that I used to wear out as a kid. James Taylor Live, I saw that tour. I think it was
Uh,
'92. Landau was in that band. That
Lee
those
Sklar.
cats in that band. So yeah, I was aware of it, but I didn't become completely aware of it until I had moved to Nashville. I was 19, 20, and I get this gig answering phones at a studio, and I start seeing these session cats come in and their cases roll in, like hearing them through the walls. And man, that's what really, I was like, oh, okay, I could do that. That's cool. Even though I was kind of on the way to doing it a little bit, but I didn't realize it, you know? I still was like, just, I'm going to be a rock star, man.
Yeah.
And
That's what guys who are 19 do. I think I want to paint a picture
and now
for
I'm a different age.
yeah, a couple more than 19. I want to paint a picture for our viewers and listeners though, because I think what I'm getting from you is that you moved to Nashville and you hadn't heard much about Nashville, but you were moved there to become a star. And that tells me that in New Jersey at the time, you were kind of a national draft pick. So you already had things going for you that somebody had the faith to put you to Nashville and say, I can work with this. True enough?
I guess. Well, I mean, I was definitely, you know, I was the young guy in all the bands I was in, you know, from the age of 14. The first band I was in, they were all 17 to 19 years old. So yeah, I mean, I was always kind of the kid in the bunch. So I guess I was, you know, one of the better players around the area, at least that small part of Jersey and in that age group. I know there were players I didn't know about. So, but yeah, I guess so. It's kind of a draft pick thing, I guess.
Okay. That area of New Jersey was where exactly?
In Northwest Jersey, where they filmed Friday the 13th. So a little town called Blairstown, and literally they filmed Friday the 13th there. That's our claim to fame. And yeah, it was a great town, but it was like an hour and a half from New York City, 30 minutes from the Delaware Water Gap, which was a great jazz scene. And it was cool, man. It was for me, it was cool. I mean, I didn't realize I was a redneck, but I was, I guess.
A New Jersey redneck.
Yeah, I was the kid in my school with the mullet and the guitar. So
okay, some of us have been there. Not the guitar, but definitely the mullet. So when you move to Nashville and you start to, you know, you're answering the phone at studios, you're starting to hear these players and you're starting to understand how the system works. When did you go, okay, I'm going headlong into country music? Or what pulled you in?
Well, that's an easy one right there. The guys that tricked me into country music were John and Kenny of Big and Rich.
Yeah, okay.
I had, through a friend, got asked to play guitar for Big Kenny. He had a deal on his own on Hollywood Records, and it was a cool record. It was kind of like Queen meets 90s rock, 90s pop rock. Really, really cool stuff. And you know, I attribute half of my guitar style to that record because the producer and guitar player, Gary Burnett, he had all these magical guitar parts on there, and I had to figure out how to make them one guitar part live. But anyway, he lost his record deal. We started a rock band called Lovejoy. Sherry just
look
said
at that.
Lovejoy. I didn't realize I could see. You spelled it wrong, Sherry, but I love you. Good pal of mine. Anyway, so we did Lovejoy for a little while, which is a rock band. We were pretty popular in Nashville, and we'd pack out 12th and Porter, pack out a place in Knoxville, but Kenny kind of started to want to make it Big and Rich. We started to have John Rich sit in with us. We started to have Cowboy Troy sit in with us, and I think 2 Foot Fred might have even made it. And it was turning into the circus, and Kenny had this vision. He's like, man, he's like, this is what Lovejoy is. It's a circus. This is Lovejoy. And we were all like, dude, this is a rock band, man. We don't, you know, all due respect to John and Troy and Fred, it's cool. Love them dearly. But especially being in our 20s and just kind of not seeing that same vision of Kenny, the band ended up. That was funny, Sherry. Anyway, so we end up breaking up, and within about 6 months or so, Kenny calls me and he's like, "Oh man, John got a record deal." I'm like, "Of course you did." You know, so they got a record deal as Big and Rich, and they asked me to play guitar in the record. And I'm like, dude, I don't play country music. And they're like, exactly, that's why we want you. So that was it. Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy was my first time hearing myself on major radio as a guitar player.
Wow. You had a crossover hit because you couldn't help that.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and then all of a sudden there was a new level of rock, I guess, in country music. You know, I'm not the first to bring a different level of rock. Nobody is there. I mean, there's always change going on. You know, there's always somebody bringing something different along the way. I could think of a guy now who's like, I was a kid of the 80s, so, you know, child of the 80s, 90s. So I had this kind of 80s influence, 70s influence that I was bringing. Guys before me were bringing 60s, 70s kind of into the 80s. Guy I know now is bringing 80s into 90s. You know, it's how it goes, you know. And there's so many great guitar players bringing different influences in.
Pete and I were kind of tossing back and forth about the Nashville scene, and I can't remember which one of us, but one of us made a case that Nashville might be able to kick LA's ass. What say you?
I don't know, man. There are some killer musicians in LA. I mean, I know a handful, and I wouldn't tangle with them. You know, they're just not used to the way we do it. There's a little more of an efficiency thing in Nashville with the chart reading and the way we go about it. But you know, I mean, who's to say which way is better? You know, I miss those times of sitting there for hours trying to find the right thing. And it doesn't take LA musicians hours or New York musicians hours. It's just they're used to getting more time to hunt for things, you know? But no, dude, musicianship equal across the board. That's all I got to say about that.
That is a diplomatic answer.
Well, I know I'm low on the total. Yeah,
I didn't want to. Pete ratted me out.
Hold on a second here. Are you telling me if you got a bunch of Nashville players together and you guys made the same album, John and I write a bunch of songs for you guys, and we got a bunch of LA players in there, you're telling me like, those guys will probably do better than us? Are you going to say
I'm
that?
not saying they do better. No, okay. I'm not saying they do better, and I'm not saying we do better. I'm saying they'd be two very interesting records.
Fantastic answer. I was trying to get that hypothetical out there and have the debate without getting in trouble with, you know, Rick and JR and Nathan and guys. But so I think why I thought that though is like you watch the Nashville kind of throw together bands like Tim Akers and the Smoking Section, and LA doesn't put that together. LA's a little more disparate than that.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's nice to see guys and girls stretch out and do things that make them happy. But honestly, I think that's what keeps your soul alive musically. You know, just for me, you know, I got to a point several years ago where I was like, it's kind of suffocating in it. You know, you do the same thing over and over every day, and it's hard not to get a little like, you know, but as soon as I started doing my own thing again, it kind of opened it all back up and made it all enjoyable again, you know? So I think you got to do that to keep fresh, you know?
Okay. That is really something. And I think when people imagine a career in music, what they don't understand is the monotony. Because there is just stuff that you just got to grind through every day, and you have to figure out where those rays of sunshine come in.
Yeah, you do. And it's nothing against the machine here, but you know, I kind of, people ask me sometimes, do I like live versus studio? And I say, you're comparing live. Yes, you have this amazing audience. Hopefully, if you're lucky, but you're playing the same songs every night, same songs for the same artist every night. But then when you're in the studio, if you're doing the mainstream country thing, you're kind of playing the same thing same songs every day, same style.
Mhm.
So six one half dozen of the other. Granted, there are days where different artists come in that you go, oh, this is different, or something like that, and that's what keeps you going too. Is those times where you get something that's a little different, and you can be different and still be mainstream. It's just weird, man. It's just weird because you never think music's going to be a job, and once in a while it feels like it.
Wow.
Gotta say it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of guys and girls that they'd kill to get to do what we do, and I hope they get the chance, and I hope they enjoy it. I look at people like Dan Dugmore, who's played with Linda Ronstadt and James Taylor, and he's still going strong, and he always has a smile on his face, and he's got the magic, man, and I don't know, maybe he keeps it in his pocket. I don't know where he keeps the magic, but he's got the magic sauce and the approach, and I just hope to always capture some of that,
Yeah. Well, Tim Pierce, I would put in that category too. He seems like he's always smiling while he plays, and
Yeah,
everything seems new to him.
Yeah, I've never met Tim, never played with Tim. I've only heard stuff he's played on through the years. I've seen a few videos. He's amazing. He's been doing it forever. I met Michael Landau. He was sweet as anything, and he still plays like he's drawing a pistol out off his belt. It's it takes something to stay that in love with it, and I get it. I'm still in love with it too. You have bumps in the road. Some people might not tell you they ever do, but I'm sure all those guys have had moments where they're like, I need a break.
Yeah.
It's almost inevitable with anything you do, but it's still freaking music. It's the best job in the world. So damn lucky. So lucky.
That's great to hear. It seems like you have been able to mix it up, going from playing live to being in the studio and doing enough variety for yourself that you have been able to, am I right about that? Just kind of keep it fresh.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think I was very fortunate, with John and Kenny, with the Big and Rich situation and the Jason Aldean stuff, to be a part of these two projects that really made a mark. It enabled me to go on the road yet still be sought after in the studio at a given time. And so when I came off the road with John and Kenny, there was all this work for me there in the studio. And then later I went back out on the road with McGraw, and there's still work for me in the studio. Of course, you add in now there's young blood, there's these awesome new guitar players, Derek Wells, Justin Ostrander, Saul Littlefield. There's a handful more. And you add on that you're gone. You've been on a bunch of records, and now there's these fresh faces. You start to work a little less, but still working, and it's great,
Yeah.
So, but it's cool because actually we're about to get busy doing a month of rehearsals with McGraw, and I'm actually at that point where I'm like, okay, I kind of need a break from studio stuff. So it's perfect timing,
Yeah,
and I also realize that I say a lot.
Those are the things that you pick up when you when you start doing these podcasts, especially if you get in the editor's chair. You start to realize your own speech patterns.
Right.
But it's no different
totally.
than when you're recording a lot. If you finish phrases, let's say a certain way, and you catch yourself doing it, and you catch yourself leaning into it all the time, like, man, and I'm sure the rest of us don't notice it. We're just enjoying the playing, but as somebody who's recording, a lot and then going back and doing a lot of mixing, and you hear yourself play the same thing. What if there's an artist out
Absolutely.
there that is okay? If there's an artist out there that's like you have, let's say that it's not necessarily a majority of your work, but you're a guitar player, a gunslinger, you rock hard. That's gonna really make you go-to guy for a certain kind of record. Is there an artist out there that you think would surprise us if you said, I really want to work with this artist? You know, like maybe it's, I don't know, Bjork or somebody, but who out there would really surprise us to hear that you're into and would like to work with?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think from my body of work, you would be surprised that I would love to play with Dylan or Sheryl Crow or, Jacob Dylan or, either Dylan. That
Yeah.
kind of stuff speaks to me. It's always spoken to me. That's music I love. Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is my favorite, band of all time. I'm a rocker by heart, but not necessarily power chord heavy rocker that you hear on Jason Aldean. I just happened to play in a metal band when I was 16. So, yeah, man, I R&B. I love playing funky stuff. I did work a while back with Mark Broussard. Love that guy. I've known him a long time since he was getting his start. And, I love playing that stuff for sure, man. Yeah, you do get stuck. I've always said, I think people I got stuck in this pigeonhole thing of the guy that plays power chords in country music. And, it kind of irked me for a little while, but I got used to it. I think people still think of me as that. I think they realize I do other stuff. I met a guitar player, young guy working in a music store the other day, and he was talking about chicken picking and like country stuff. And he said, I went to lunch with Rob McNally, and I asked him, do you really need to learn how to do that stuff? And he said, yeah. And he said, I thought about you. I thought about, he doesn't do that stuff. And I'm like, well, I just fake it. I had enough Chet Atkins and enough jazz and enough Chet Atkins and enough fingerstyle classical in my background. And I've heard enough country. And at this point, I've obviously listened to some and lifted a little bit to learn it. But for the most part, I got my start, anything country. Whew, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's funny because I still freak out. Like John Rich called me the other day. We're doing a session next week. And he said, it's straight ahead country. And I still, to this day, when somebody says that, I go, and you called
what does that
me
mean?
why? It's straight ahead country. There's no keyboards, and you called me to play guitar? I don't know, man. I guess it's all on how you nail it down,
Yeah, well, guitar has always had a place in country music where there's always been monsters. I mean, Chet Atkins, Roy Clark,
Yeah.
Glenn Campbell, those guys are gorillas. And in somebody saying, oh, it's straight up country, let's call a guy who knows his way around the fretboard and can shred for us and do whatever. Surprise, that's you. So there you go.
Yeah, exactly. It surprises me every time.
Steve Cropper is in Nashville nowadays. Do you run into him?
I've seen him. I have not. I don't think I've ever talked to him. A friend of mine is good buddies with him and plays with him, but I've never had the opportunity.
Yeah.
But he's great and he's loud. That man turns the amp up. I think he goes to the dials and goes, just turns them all up, even in little living rooms.
That is awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah. Our friend Neoshi played drums on his last album. And when I was growing up, Neoshi was my friend Toshi's kid brother. Say what?
Spice. Neoshi Spice Jackson. There's a time he went by Spice, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Neoshi. Good dude.
We go way back great too. Dude. But he's like 6 years younger than us. And he was the kid brother who always followed us around band reviews and stuff with, when we were playing. And then he just emerged as this crazy, amazing drummer. And then when he moved to Nashville, he did all kinds of fun stuff. And we were like, well, suddenly we're fans of the kid brother.
Well, it's the quiet ones you got to watch out for.
That's right.
Ones that sit back and take the notes. Now, he is a great drummer. We met. He's one of the first guys. I think we jammed like from years ago. in Nashville when I got there. I think at some of the blues jams.
Yeah,
I can't remember, man. There's a lot of music that's happening here. Woo! It's
there's a lot.
all going away, bro.
It's nice to mix it up with a guy who's got so much music happening that he's forgotten more than most people can talk about.
Yeah, I actually was had a reunion with a band, this band called Stroller. We didn't know we were having a reunion. We all ended up at the same club, minus our singer. And somebody said something about the Muscle Shoals when we recorded down there. I'm like, I don't even remember us doing that. I didn't even remember that. Yeah, and he said, remember when the crew, the interns from the studio were loading our gear out for us, and they started loading out the studio's Mellotron into our trailer, and our bass players, he's standing there like,
We're about to come up.
kind of going, what do I say? Do I let him put in the trailer? And he's like, no, that's not our. And when he said that, I remembered the Mellotron, and it all started coming back, But not saying we partied or anything, but
yeah. Now you had to weigh out whether they would miss it.
yeah, well, that's
So
what he
if
did.
you-
Yeah, no, I mean we're all good guys. I don't think any of us would have felt good about taking it, but you have that second of, that'd be cool at our house.
That'd be cool. We're coming hopefully out of a pandemic that has made a lot of live music slow down. Nashville maybe less so than places out here in California, certainly. How much live have you been playing during the pandemic? And are you, if you've been cooped up in the studio, are you ready to launch back out there?
I'm more than ready to get out there. I haven't been on stage near enough, to be honest with you. As far as like club dates in Nashville, I played a handful in my band, and we only did about 8 shows with McGraw last year between June and December. But we are gearing up for all rehearsals all February, and pretty much like a 35 date tour, I think, this year with McGraw. So I'm really looking forward to that for sure. And
Wow.
yeah, Nashville, Tennessee, they weren't as, not that we weren't as affected by the pandemic, but there were more people willing to just go, we're rocking, we're doing this. And so there was more going on. I didn't take part in a lot of it. Fortunately, had the studio working a lot of work, just coming in, people saying, hey, can you do overdubs on our song? We'll send you the tracks, and a lot of stuff like that. And so enough to keep me busy, but I definitely missed that interaction of the audience for sure. I can't wait to get back to it, and hopefully it just stays this way. Hopefully we're going to get back to some normalcy.
Yeah. Well, hey, I have been hogging up the first half of this interview because I have a hard out at 11:30. But this has been great fun. I really appreciate you doing this with me. And I want to ask one last question. You've played venues from tiny smoky bars to huge arenas. What's the sweet spot?
I really, really love open clubs, fun. But man, theaters. I love theaters. Theaters are awesome. The first touring I did was theaters, and there's just something about that that's cool. A theater where they will let the people come up to the front sometimes too, so you get that part of it, And there was, I think when we did Tim and Faith in Vegas, they would sporadically through the show let people come up front for a little while, and they'd cycle them through. So that was kind of cool. I just love the sound of a good old fashioned theater and wood stage, and it's a pretty amazing thing, So sorry, but yeah, I think theaters are my favorite, but I'll take any of it, to be honest with you.
Right
it's
on.
all great if you can connect with an audience and feel that rush. It's beautiful.
Well, hey man, I'm a huge fan, and I'm really happy to have done this exploration with you. And Pete, thanks again for letting me just jump in and then boogie out when I need to. So, hey, thanks a lot, Adam. Thanks, Pete.
You're
Well, it's
welcome.
nice to meet you, John. I appreciate it, man. Take
All right,
care,
talk
brother.
to you soon.
So now that we have a little bit of break here, let me make sure I say this. Everybody should go to adamschoenfeld.com. That's where all of the basic information is. If you want to listen to The Skies Falling Down, his new single, there is the song on YouTube. It's also at adamschoenfeld.com. That's how you let Adam know, hey, we love what you're doing. We have a little bit of work to do here, talking about this guy named Jason Piccolo that is a friend of mine and has been forever a friend of yours. Let's throw a little bit of attention at Jason and his work at the Protectors.
Yeah, man. Jason and I, man, hometown, Blairstown boy, man that has served our country and is a sweet human being, beautiful dude, man. And he's always on the right side of everything, man.
What kind of friends were you guys growing up? Like, were you close?
You got to
Did
tune
you guys
into the Protectors podcast.
Yeah, I'll put a link in there. How close were you guys?
I mean, dude, I think we ran in different circles for sure. I think, you know, life brings you closer. We had a good friend, really close friend in common that passed away a few years ago, and our dear friend Michelle. And, you know, we all came together over that. And, you know, I think there's something that reignites those bonds, even if you didn't hang out every day with somebody in your hometown. You know, you're bonded, man. You're bonded. And I consider him a friend, and the stuff he's done is just amazing. You know, stuff I could never do. So, and yeah, that's the deal.
Yeah. Well, and you're nailing down who he is. And wherever you listen to podcasts, type in The Protectors and it'll come up, but also on like Amazon Fire. It's incredible to do that. Who else from your guys' peer group has done something? I mean, here you are, dozens and dozens of albums, hella #1 hits. You know, Tim McGraw, oh yeah, he's one of my bosses. Yeah, so is Jason Aldean. Not big and I mean, you guys have done incredibly well. Who else is in your peer group that you want to make sure you mention?
Oh God. Well, I mean, I don't know who's done what on a scale that's in public sight, but you know, there's the important things to me, you know, like my friend Brian Wan, who was in my band in high school. You know, he's a doctor. He's, you know, he balanced music after high school forever and all these years of college to become a doctor, and now he's battling, going through this COVID thing with us. But as a doctor, you know, people like that are more important than, you know, people like me and getting in the limelight. So and I see people that are still doing what I'm doing. They may have had a different job that nobody knows about, but they're still chasing their dreams in theater. Like my friend Tasha Williams, she was Rizzo, and I was Kaniki in Greece in high school. You know, and I still watch her Instagram. She's doing all this acting and still singing, and everybody's still, you know, chasing their dreams, and that's what it's about, you know.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. In my hometown, I'm sort of the mayor of my class, and if you were in our class, I would like. Here's what I would say to you. I'd say, "Hey, Adam, I don't want to bug you, and I know you do this for a living, but what would it take to get you to play a little something for us at the reunion or whatever, or to come out or to talk to the kids in the high school class?" Do you get stuff like that where folks are like, "Can you give a little something back to where you're from?"
You know what? I haven't. No one's asked me. I would do it in a heartbeat if I could.
Right.
If the time was
That's what I
right,
figured.
for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe the door is just open, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And it's okay to say no because you do make a living doing it. It's okay to say no because you make a living doing these things, but by simply asking and saying, "Hey, is this a big deal for you?" Almost everybody I encounter is like, "Yeah, I'd love to do it. I'd love to go tell some kid." And I go back to my high school every year and I talk to the class, the senior class. And one of the things I tell them is if you're a musician, you can absolutely make a living in music. It may not be what you imagine, but you can absolutely, maybe you end up being a producer, maybe you end up being an engineer, maybe you do something else, but you can absolutely make a living in music. Got to be lucky, you got to work hard, but that's any field, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and music, you know, take away the work part of it. Music is such a healing thing. You know, people love music, and it's such an amazing way to communicate. So I think anybody that wants to do it, you know, should be, you know, you should help them, you know. But it's funny because I forget the producer. Maybe it was Butch Walker, but I could be wrong. I heard he was doing a speech at a school about the music business, and they were fielding questions, and one of the students said, "What's your biggest piece of advice for somebody wanting to get in the music business?" And he said, "Don't." And when he got off stage, apparently the promoter was upset with him and said, "Why would you say that?" And he said, "Because the ones that don't, because of what I said, wouldn't have made it."
Yeah.
You know, they wouldn't have made it. The ones that want to do it, that are going to do it, are going to do it no matter what you say. You know,
Yeah.
so if you can go speak to those people and anyone, but yeah, just to inspire, even just to inspire to give back in that way would be great too.
Yeah. Yeah. How lucky were you? Like, I mean, obviously you're lucky and everything that you get to do all
Cool.
this, but if you were to run the gauntlet again, is it unlikely that you'd be sitting in this chair talking about all of these incredible people that you work with and all the opportunities you have?
It might be. I'm glad you said that, because I said to so many people how lucky I am, and they go, "Oh yeah, but you worked hard." I'm like, "Well, I worked at playing guitar. I don't know if you can call that working hard. I worked because I loved it." But it goes back to every little moment, who you were with, where, when, every ladder, every rung in the ladder. You know, I can trace back to who I was with, who called who to get me what gig. You know, so yeah, man, I'm super lucky, and I try not to take it for granted. And yeah, it could have been one false move, man. One false move. There's a song title. I'm writing that one down. One false move. But seriously, lucky as hell, man. I am so lucky. I'm writing it down.
I love it. No, I love it. You did that. Actually, I had that same thing happen to me. I am not a songwriter, but it doesn't mean you can't write songs. We all need to express ourselves. I get to have conversations as a profession, but my buddy Scott, so my friend Phil and I were going to go to his house. They live out in the Temecula wine country. And I call Scott and say, "Hey, Phil wants to come over." Phil has ALS, so Phil gets whatever he wants. Whatever social interaction he wants, he gets. And so Phil and I are going to come over, and Phil said, "Hey, let's go to the wineries and drink some wine." And they're literally across the street from Scott's house. Like, they're everywhere. And Scott says this line to me, and it became a song in my head. He said, "Man, I've been dry since Mexico." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is the response."
Oh wow.
Yeah, this is the response
Yeah.
to Toby Keith. What if it doesn't stay in Mexico? What if you fall in love and then have to go home and you have to deal with a broken heart, and you're like, "I can't be drinking right now," you know? And it's such a cool premise for a song.
Wow. That's awesome.
How do these
I
things
love
come to
that.
you? How do you, yeah, we'll write it. How do these things come to you though, when you're getting inspired to write a song?
Sometimes just like that. I might write that song tonight. There's my wife. Luck or good choices. Luck, baby, luck. But man, it's different every time. Sometimes a great melody will come to me. I'll be like, "Oh," and then words will come to me. You know, sometimes a guitar lick will come to me. Sometimes just a title. Sometimes, you know, it's all different every time. Occasionally, I'll sit down and it'll be like just a dude, like "Sky is Falling Down." My friend Dino Brown comes over with a recording of a dryer, his clothes dryer, going, and I go boom, da, 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 da. Boom, guitar lick written, song starts, you know, and then Katie comes in and helps us finish the chorus. So it's like, you don't know where it's going to come from. And that's the beautiful thing about it. That's why I don't think I enjoy the Nashville writing process. There's some girls and guys that are amazing at, we're getting together every day. We're going to write songs that any country artist could cut or any artist could cut. And they've got their thing they do, and it's beautiful. And some of the greatest songs have been written that way. And I've written some good songs that way, but I don't necessarily enjoy that as much as the, oh, here it comes. Here, whoa, it just came at me, you know. It's different every time.
I love that. Yeah, and that's again, I'm not a songwriter, but it doesn't mean there's not music in my head. And I was in a Paris train station, Gare de l'Est, if I'm not mistaken, and there's this tone that they play for like attention, everybody, and it was like just the perfect tone. And all of a sudden, behind that, in my head, the drum track comes in, and it was like boo, boo, you know, like that. And then all of a sudden, like this song is just in my head for weeks. I don't have the ability to get it out of my head very good, but that's the thing. Like these things happen. You hear these musical things. I'm singing all the time. I'm, you know, making up little jingles and everything. I'm like a failed jingle writer probably, but it's neat to be able to pull from things that you see and experience in day-to-day life. Wycliffe was on Live from Daryl's House, and he talked about how there's music everywhere, a bird being up in the sky or whatever it is, and everything was musical, and it makes him make different choices. Like instead of taking that adjacent harmony, he'll take this harmony up here, because you don't expect someone to go there. It's just as musical. It's just a different choice because he's open to all of it.
I agree. Totally. It is everywhere. And you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
For sure. So what instrument do you play?
I got a little, well, you can't see it now. There's a guitar back here somewhere. It's a Martin, and I just got a hollow body, and I've got a Telecaster. That sounds like I'm a good guitar player. I am a
Yeah.
G E G C A. You know, like I
Me
can
too.
play and I can sing a
Me
little bit.
too. I've made my living with that. Yeah. That's all I know.
Nice and simple. But the other thing I wanted to ask you was, so I don't know if you know Mandy Barnett. She's a Nashville singer, and fills a completely different bucket in the country genre. You know, she'll go perform at the Opry. She'll sing behind somebody. She'll stand at the mic and sing herself. And she worked with this guy. He's passed now, in his 90s, and he worked with everybody: Count Basie, Tommy Dorsey, all these people. And his home instrument was the trombone. He actually was older than the electric guitar. And so when he thought about making music, there were horns, and they weren't just blasting. They could be subtle, they could be sweet. And so his last big project was working with Mandy on her album, and he did all the arrangements. And his approach, I mean, if he's not the last guy, there's not many people left that can approach music from that way. Having heard big band, having heard, you know, Tommy Dorsey lead a band, do a solo from a trombone.
I would love to hear that. I'm not ultra familiar with Mandy's music, but that makes me want to do a dive, especially now hearing that. I love when people put different things together. You know, that's a beautiful thing. I grew up. My high school was a private high school, and we had a music department that was killer, and most of our music instructors were jazz people, and I learned a lot of my improvisation from horn players, as well as my guitar teacher, Scott Pensack. But there was something I think priceless about that, to get that side of it, you know. So horns are cool. They're kind of limitless.
They really are.
Awesome.
For being such a simple thing, 3 valves on a trumpet or whatever. I mean, a trombone is really truly limitless, because everywhere is a note, right? And even mistakes are like the perfect note. We had Robert, I think you know Dr. Robert Greenberg, but we had him on, and he's like, "Hey, you guys had a great show with this guy named Mick Gillette, who's like a legend in the brass community. Basically, you can't play the trumpet better." And there's video of him in a live performance playing the trumpet. He's from the Tower of Power horn section, right? And he's like one of the main dudes. So he's playing the trumpet, and then he goes over and grabs the trombone, and then plays the trombone in the same song. And
that's cool.
As you know, like that's just not something that you can do. It's, yes, they look the same, but they are dramatically different instruments, especially to play them live and switch.
That's like going from a bass guitar to a theremin.
Right. Live.
I played trumpet in junior high. Middle school, as they call it now, in junior high school. If I remember correctly, you could play taps. I think you held down the first and third, and you could play every note like that, or something
Right.
like that. I don't know. Weird
Yeah, because it's
memories.
played on the bugle normally that has no valves at all, right? So there is a position.
That's right. Yeah. It's all about your embouchure, you know.
Well, and that's what makes that trombone to trumpet mid-song switch incredible, because completely different embouchure, completely different mechanics, you know, and it's just, you have these incredible people all around us that are truly like, you can look at them even at your level of success and go, that guy's a musical genius. He can grab anything, or she can do this with this, and nobody else can do that.
Yeah, dude, there's so much sick talent out there, and especially now with social media, you can see all of it. Granted, some of it, you know, people might only know that those 5 things they've put as posts, and they practice and practice and practice. But there are some out there that are truly, genuinely just genius, and it's humbling. It's very humbling, you know. Secret of the room full of the best musicians in the world too is that every one of them thinks they're the worst, you know.
Yeah.
Except for a couple guys I know, they don't think they're the worst.
So if you get into and that's fine, you have to have some ego too. But if you get into a room full of just real chop pound guys that can do everything, and it's your turn, are you like, how do you approach that? Do you play like less and try to be more efficient? Do you try to impress them by really going bananas? Do you hold something back? How do you approach those things when it's just you guys, you know, just back in the shed, just playing?
It doesn't happen that much, man. Occasionally, you know, we'll be warming up in the studio getting sounds, and a couple of us will break into some kind of jam, and it's usually sparked by one of us, and it's very in the moment. You know, I never really sense it being a battle. And I remember reading an interview with Eric Clapton many, many moons ago in Guitar Player magazine, talking about young guys trying to outshred him, and he'd say, "I just let them, and then I just play, you know, old slow hand." And I guess, if anything, I've always subscribed to that. You know, I might hear somebody shred, and I might just come in with one note, I guess. But for the most part, you know, I'm not really taking part in many jam type situations. Occasionally I get, like, I've been getting inspired lately. The last few shows we did with McGraw, there's one song that ends the set and I'm doing a solo, and then the encore ends with David Levita doing a solo, and he just kills it every time, and it's made me step up to where I'm like, all right, mine's gonna end better than yours. But he always kills me, so
It's funny how playing something virtuosic or note packed is incredible, but one note, the right time, the right length can also be, if not like even more impactful. And the example I always use, and I've not said this for a long time on the show because I used to say it a lot, but in the song Maneater by Hall & Oates, and I don't know if you know this, there was a note that starts after maybe like the second time through, like the second verse or so. And it's like Daryl takes his coin purse back when you had a coin purse, and he puts it on the key, and it just, and it stays there the rest of the song. And it's like a minor or maybe a 7. And yeah, you'll have to listen to it. And it takes a minute to get there. Be patient. But once it's there, it don't leave.
Yeah.
And what that does is it brings danger. You know, like the song's fun and everything else, but it's like this Maneater, right? And you're like, God, it's kind of getting, as soon as that note starts, you're like, get that off my back. And so one note.
Oh, I need to listen to that now.
Right? Yeah. And I don't know how you write a note that is multi-measures long. I don't know if it's just like, I don't know, you know, how you annotate that. Because if you put a whole note thing,
just put a line.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And it just goes continued. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
wow, that's cool.
Yeah. And then you think, how do I do that? Right? You want to do it. You're like, how do I make a note that's 12 measures long or goes the entire song and still does what that note does? I'm desperate to hear what you think about this. We'll have to talk another time about that. But
wow, it's just a matter of what a song calls for and what you can get away with it that makes it a little more you know. It all depends whether it's, a lot of times we'll do that with real kind of droney guitar parts. It might not be one note the whole time, but it might keep going back to it, or make a loop out of it or something like that, or a keyboard loop. I think there's a lot of that going on these days, but I don't know if it's as daring as just going like that.
Yeah. Exactly. And the thing is that note is in plain sight. I didn't notice it for 30 years.
I can't recall noticing that, but I will now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And once you hear it, you'll know, and it changes the song for me, at least. I wanted to ask you about The Sky Is Falling Down. You get to write your own stuff. It's not your day job. You're not like, that's not what you do. You've got to get in the studio. You've got to go on the road. And in between, you write these songs. What's your home genre? Don't just tell me rock, like really get specific.
Man, I my friend has a new term for a genre, and it's called modern classic. And that is taking all these beautiful influences from the last years and putting them into something a little fresh and new. And I think if that was a genre, that's where I would fit. I love that term too, because my influences range from the Beatles and George Harrison and Paul McCartney to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers to the Foo Fighters to U2. A little older school country has gotten me, Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan, Radiohead. I've got all these influences that span decades, and I can't help but be affected by things that I absorbed. And so I don't really know what the genre is. All I know is I can't stop doing it. And I did this record because I finally had this batch of stuff that all made sense to me, and everything was real lyrically, and it was time. And I'm gonna keep going. I've already got like half of a second record written, and I'm ready to rock, man. And I just love making music, and it's kind of like, as much as my day job is the best job in the world, it's kind of like being a lawyer, and I still have my band, and I still want people to hear my songs, because I know what it's like to see people get touched by a song, and I've been touched by a song, and I kind of want to do that for people, and my own ego, I guess. I don't know, and I can't quite explain it, but it's just a magical thing. Music's powerful. I like being on both sides of it.
And creating your own stuff, especially with your capability, it's important that you do that. And this is me like telling you what to do, but yes, you play with whoever, feel incredible person, and you go out and you kill it for them, everything. But when you're looking back, the one thing you're probably going to say more than anything else is, I wish I would have wrote my own stuff more, and believed in it more and pushed it more. Because when I read my old writing and my old others, I'm like, I should have done more of that. And back then I thought it was all garbage. That's all garbage. And it is garbage, but it's not. And so you've got to go out and push that envelope. You absolutely, in the song Sky's Falling Down, you for sure hear that Beatles influence. You for sure hear the Coldplay / U2, and you for sure hear Tom Petty. And it sounds like something else, and I can't think of what it is, but it's got, for me, not a new wave vibe, but like maybe post new wave kind of spot. I can't think of what the band is, but boy, it just feels really comfortable, which I mean to be a compliment, because it's like, this is not you have to it doesn't stick out and go, that's weird,
I think I might know what it is, because my friend said it to me a couple of weeks ago. She said, don't take this the wrong way. She said, but it reminds me of Tears for Fears. And I love Tears for Fears. So that's one. That could be one you're thinking of, but it's got that kind of, if you ever listen to their Everyone Loves a Happy Ending record, it's kind of got that vibe. And I was like, thank you. Love them. That song, I love that song. It's great because Dino and I started it, and we wrote it, and it originally had a different chorus. The original chorus said, everyone needs a friend. That was the original chorus. And Katie, as some know, produced the record for me, and I brought it to her, and she said, that chord, and I kind of knew this before I brought it to her, but I tried to ignore it. She said, you've got 2 songs here. That chorus doesn't go with this verse. I'm like, okay. And she goes, it needs a melody like, da-da-da-da-da. I was like, as soon as she said that melody, I was like, the sky is falling down. So that's how it was born. It went through all this stuff, you know. It's kind of a song of hope. You know, there's a background vocal at the end of it that says, look at the good all around you, which is kind of a turn from the rest of the lyric of the song. But that's kind of the whole point of the song is forgive yourself, get out of the dark. Yep, the sky's falling down. It sucks, but time to go.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I used to say a lot when I was in combat, I got to go take a nap because I needed a break. And someone maybe would look at me like, why aren't you out working this problem? And I'm like, I promise there's going to be war when I wake up. You know, like it's going to just still be here. The sky's going to fall down tomorrow. It's going to fall down the day after that. It's, some point you just take a time out and you do. I defy anybody to drive from LA to South Carolina and not tell me, and try to tell me that their nation isn't full of beautiful people and beautiful things. And if you just get out of your spot where the sky's falling down, I promise the sky's not falling in New Mexico. Just get out there, just drive, go experience.
Yeah, man. Did you say in combat? Is that what you said?
Yeah. I was.
Thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks, sir. I was
you.
a spy. I went off the camp a lot, so it was a lot of heavy days.
I bet. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about the Edge because one of the things about his playing is, I would say, and I'm a U2 fan, I would say he's one of like the geniuses of the guitar. He took it and completely redefined it. As a rule in their band, he wasn't allowed to do the triumphant solo. Now, over the years, he snuck a couple in here and there, but when people criticize him, they say like he just does this, over and over again. However, changed how that guitar is used. And you hear his influence. I would say now that his influence is so ubiquitous, there's now people 3 or 4 generations past that you don't even know you're copying what the Edge developed. But, and I know you like U2 because you mentioned, you play the guitar. What are your thoughts on how he approaches the instrument?
Well, I think he approaches the instrument for the song, which I think is the most important thing you can do as a musician. It's not about the triumphant solo. It's not about, playing something amazing. It's about supporting the song. And I think he's done that successfully for his band for all these years, and he's gotten cooler and cooler at it. I would be curious, to really dissect their records if I had the time and pick out some tracks and see what was like, I'm blanking on the producer. I want to say Daniel and Wah, but who did exactly what, like which of all the parts is him, which is producer stuff. But he's freaking rocking, and live is great, and it's beautiful. And then, like you said, it carries on. It was, I'm sure, forever in Nashville. Play something really kind of the Edge, like U2 guitar part. Well, when Coldplay came out, that's the only thing we ever heard in the studio as guitar players. Is like, give us something Coldplay-ish on that verse, something droney and Coldplay. Well, Johnny is amazing. I think he's done so much for music as a guitar player, but he kind of took handoff from the Edge. I think they both play for the song. I love that style. I love, and I say that style, but Edge doesn't do one thing.
Right.
I think he's great. I love him. I wish I could meet him. We have a friend, Jerry McPherson, one of the great guitar players in Nashville. I hope he doesn't mind me telling this story, but apparently in the airport, and he was at the urinal, and the Edge comes up to the urinal next to him, and he just turned to him. And this is the whole story. It's not that great, but it's funny. He just turned to him and went, "Morning, Edge," and that was it. But I haven't even got to meet him at a urinal like Jerry did, so maybe I will one day.
John, we went to Dodger Stadium. We were doing a show there, and the Dodgers are great. They were fantastic hosts, and we were up by where Vin Scully works, and so John was taking a leak, and Vin Scully walks in because he takes a leak too, and John was turning around to like get out of the bathroom and blasts him in like the ribs, like really runs into him hard. Like, it is an 88-year-old man, and John's fairly well-founded, so when he hits you, you stay hit for a while. And he's like, "Oh my God, almost killed." And Vin's like, "I'm all right. I'm talking to him." Oh, it's so great. It's such a funny thing when you have these moments. It's one of my favorite things to ask.
That- I had a great.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off, buddy. Well,
No, you're good.
another great urinal story, and then we'll move on. Uh,
Yeah.
the first time I played the Opry as a rock kid from New Jersey, I was playing with Randy Foster, and I remember being at the middle urinal and getting flanked by these two guys in nudie suits. My memory, one was tall and one was short, so I like to say it was Porter and Little Jimmy. But I'm going to the bathroom, and they start talking over me, and it's like, how's your daughter? Is the dog okay? No, the dog died. Did they get their truck back? And like, what? No, they didn't get their truck back. And I'm like standing there going, oh my God. I'm standing in the middle of a country song at a urinal. It was hilarious. And then years later, I realized they probably looked at me and went, let's fuck with this kid. Sorry.
You can say that. That's all right. One of my favorite things to ask,
Sorry.
so I'm going to ask
But
you, but also there's another version of the question. Like I asked Mandy, I'm like, sometimes you're sitting in a room and you are sitting there with the Edge, or you're sitting there with, whomever it is. Willie Nelson walks in. And even though you're a professional, it doesn't take your breath away. It does take your attention away a little bit. I mean, at times it may not be that person, may not be
mhm.
Willie, but someone's going to walk in the room. You're gonna be like, oh my God, I'm about to play a song with Willie Nelson, or I'm going to jam with the Edge. And if you remove yourself, your professional self, and you look at that and you're like, you get excited. I mean, I do it too when I talk to people. So I want to ask you that. And I want to follow that up with, I love to ask, like, if Tim McGraw was on the show, one of the things I would ask Tim is I'd say, sometimes you're Tim McGraw. Sometimes you're the dude who's taking care of whatever his wife says. It doesn't matter your wife's faith. You're like, yep. You know what? There's a time when, like, if the camera sees me, so I asked this Playmate of the Year from 2000, Brandy, what's her last name? I can't remember. Yeah, she was Playmate of the Year, right? I'm like, what's a moment when we would all see this super glamorous, super sexy lady, and we all be like, oh, she does that? And she's like, I clean my own toilets at my Airbnb. That's what I do. So there is this super beautiful, and she
Yeah.
can't help but be beautiful. I've had other guys like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the one that takes the trash out. No matter how long I've worked, the trash has to go out. My wife never does it. It's always me. So what's that moment when you're in studio and you have to, like, you could pinch yourself, except for you're a pro and you have to work. And then what's the moment when here's this guy who's in on all these #1 hits, tours with the biggest musicians in the world, and then you see something that's completely mundane, whether it's you or it's Tim or it's Jason, whoever it is. What's that thing where you're like, if people could see, Don Henley right now, whatever, and his pants just split on stage, or
It's toilets. It always comes back to toilets. Yeah.
that's what,
Yeah, no, it always comes back to toilets for me. I'm still putting off repairing a toilet at home. Three of them actually. I'm just running with it. I'm like, okay, eventually I'm gonna have to do it.
yeah,
So I've got three waiting to be fixed at about 5 months. So for me, it's toilets. You
right.
know, as far as the kind of starstruck moment, yeah. I mean, it doesn't happen to me as much in country because I think I might get starstruck if it was, even though I've talked to him and know he's a down to earth dude. If Willie walked in, I'd be a little starstruck, but I have had interaction with him outside of the studio and off stage,
Yeah,
or a dolly, somebody like that that takes the oxygen out of the room.
right.
Um, but for me, it was a live thing. We were in
Mhm.
Vegas with Tim and Faith, and I'm in the dressing room with Tim, and it's just me and him. He's like, "Man, the boss is coming tonight," and I'm going, "The boss." I'm thinking, all I could think is, "Well, you're the boss, dude. What are you talking? Who do you call the boss?" And he
Nope.
goes, "Dude, the boss, Springsteen." I'm like, "What?" He's friends with him. He's like, "He's going to be here tonight." I'm like, I went out on stage knowing Springsteen was in the audience. I was like, I was so nervous. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is, and met him later in the dressing room. He was awesome. He's a cool dude. And Joe Walsh was really cool too. He came in one time, and he walks in the dressing room before the show, and I said, "Oh, well, now I'm nervous." And he said something, so he just kind of plugged it off like, "You're nervous," blah blah blah. He just kind of deflected it like he was the most humble person in the world. So that was nice. But yeah, the Springsteen thing got me. That was
Yeah.
I was like, what do I do?
what do I do? How do I make that? I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah. I'm a Jersey boy, so.
Yeah, of course, right? Of course. Like he walks in, there's people, like if Sinatra was alive and he walks in the room, Jersey boy, before anything else, he's like, oh man, it's that great story that he tells or told, Chaz Palminteri tells it. He's like, hey, Frank, I'm from the same town in Jersey. He's like, congratulations, kid. You'll always be the second most famous person from Hoboken,
That's awesome.
There is a level. Anyhow, I don't want to take any more of your time. I want to give you a chance. Everybody should go listen to The Sky's Falling Down. There's the YouTube link. It's also going to be in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast side. Close us out. What do you want to say, Adam?
Man, just check out my music if you can. I'd love to know what you think about it. Go to my website, go to Instagram, which is just at Shoenfeld, and I hope you dig it. Maybe I'll see you somewhere. I'll play it on stage for you. But I appreciate you, Pete. Thanks for having me, man. It's great.
Stand by.
Talking to you.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching.